One day she's going to come back, not because you chased her, but because she finally felt what life is like without you. And by then, everything will be different. Most men never understand this until it's too late. When you're always present, always giving, always available, your value slowly becomes invisible, not because you're not enough, but because consistency without boundaries often gets taken for granted. She gets used to your attention, your effort, your presence. It becomes normal to her. And what becomes normal stops feeling special. That's when the shift begins. She starts pulling away, not always consciously, but because the emotional intensity isn't the same anymore. At that point, most men react the wrong way. They try harder, they give more, they chase more. They think if they just prove themselves a little more, she'll come back stronger. But what they don't realize is the more they try to hold on, the more they lower their own perceived value. Because now it feels like you need her more than she needs you, and that imbalance slowly pushes her further away. But everything changes the moment you stop. When you step back, when you remove your constant presence, when your attention is no longer guaranteed, that's when the silence begins to speak louder than anything you could say. At first, she may not react, she may even enjoy the space. But over time, something shifts internally. The absence that once felt normal starts to feel unfamiliar. The attention she once had without effort is no longer there, and that's when memory kicks in. She starts replaying moments, the way you made her feel, the consistency you brought, the energy you gave without hesitation. And now, instead of experiencing it, she's remembering it. And there's a big difference between having something and only being able to think about it. Because once something becomes a memory, it gains emotional weight. This is where your value finally becomes clear to her, not when you were giving it freely, but when it's no longer available. She begins to understand what she lost, not because you told her, but because she feels the absence of it in her daily life. And that feeling creates something powerful, regret mixed with desire, regret for letting it go, and desire to experience it again. But here's the part most people miss: this only works if your absence is real. Not a game, not a tactic, not something you fake for a reaction. It has to come from a place of self respect where you genuinely shift your focus back to your own life. Because if you're secretly waiting, checking, hoping, then nothing really changes when she comes back, and many times she will. It's not because you convinced her, it's because losing you showed her your value in a way your presence never could. People only fully value what they feel they can truly lose. As long as she feels comfortable, as long as she believes you're always going to be there no matter what, there's no real urgency in her emotions. Comfort is predictable, and while it feels good, it doesn't create intensity. When everything is certain, when she knows she can pull away, come back, and still find you waiting in the same place, her feelings never get pushed to a deeper level. They stay stable, but they don't grow. And over time, that stability turns into indifference. This is where most men misunderstand what's really happening. They think being consistent, always available, and always understanding will secure the connection. But what they don't realize is that when there's no risk of losing you, there's no reason for her to fully invest. Human nature doesn't deeply value what feels guaranteed. It values what feels uncertain, what feels like it could be lost. The moment that certainty disappears, everything changes. When she starts to sense that you're no longer emotionally attached in the same way, that you're not chasing, not waiting, not reacting the way you used to, that comfort she relied on begins to fade. And in its place, something much stronger begins to grow. Fear of loss. Fear is a powerful emotional driver. It creates urgency, it forces attention, it makes people reassess their decisions and their behavior. When she realizes that you might not be there the next time she decides to come back, it triggers a completely different emotional response. Now, instead of casually drifting in and out, she starts thinking about what it would actually mean to lose you for good. That's when her actions begin to change. She becomes more curious, more attentive, more present, not because you asked for it, but because she feels the shift. The dynamic is no longer the same. You're no longer the one trying to hold things together. Now, she's the one trying to understand where she stands with you, but this only happens when your detachment is real. If you're still secretly hoping, still waiting, still emotionally tied to her, every move, she will feel that energy. And that means the comfort never truly goes away. The fear of loss never fully activates. You have to reach a point where you genuinely accept that you could lose her and still be okay. That's what creates the shift. This doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop clinging. There's a difference. When you care without attachment, you remain grounded. You don't react out of fear, you don't chase out of insecurity, and you don't lose yourself trying to keep someone in your life. And that's exactly what makes her feel something she didn't feel before, the possibility that you're no longer guaranteed. And once that realization hits, her emotions intensify in a way comfort never allowed. Fear of losing you will always create more urgency than the comfort of having you. When you're constantly present in someone's life, talking every day, filling every silence, and always being available, there's no space left for reflection. Everything becomes immediate, reactive, and emotionally crowded. She doesn't have to think about how she feels because you're always there keeping the connection alive. And while that might seem like a good thing on the surface, it actually prevents something important from happening. Emotional clarity. Clarity doesn't come from constant interaction, it comes from distance. It comes from moments of silence where there's no distraction, no conversation, no reassurance. When you step back and remove your presence, you also remove the emotional noise that was covering her true feelings. At first, that silence might feel normal to her. She might not react immediately. But over time, something begins to shift internally. Without your constant attention, she's left alone with her thoughts. And that's where the real process begins. She starts replaying moments in her mind, not because you told her to, but because there's nothing else filling that space. She begins to think about how things felt when you were around, how you treated her, how consistent you were, and how different things feel now without you. This is where clarity starts to build, not forced, not rushed, but naturally. She begins to separate temporary emotions from deeper feelings. Sometimes people pull away because they feel overwhelmed, unsure, or simply too comfortable, but when that comfort is removed, they start to recognize what was actually meaningful. And that realization only happens when there's enough distance for them to truly feel the absence. Most men interrupt this process without even realizing it. The moment there's silence, they rush in to fill it. They send messages, try to check in, or attempt to restart the connection. But by doing that, they reset the entire cycle. They bring back the noise, the distraction, and the lack of clarity. Instead of giving her the chance to understand her feelings, they keep her in a state of emotional confusion. When you allow that space to exist, something powerful happens. She begins to emotionally reconnect on her own terms, not because you pushed her, but because she arrived at that feeling by herself. And when someone reaches that point on their own, the emotion is stronger, more real, and more lasting. This is why silence can be more powerful than words. It gives her the room to miss you, to think about you, and to understand what you truly meant in her life without any external pressure. And when that clarity finally hits, it changes the way she sees you completely. Clarity grows in silence, not in constant communication. There's a subtle shift that happens when you're no longer as available as you used to be, and most people underestimate how powerful that shift really is. When you're always there, replying instantly, showing up every time, giving your attention without pause, you become predictable. And while predictability can feel safe, it doesn't create excitement or emotional intensity. Over time, it lowers your perceived value, not because you're lacking anything, but because there's no challenge left, no sense of rarity in your presence. But the moment that availability changes, everything starts to feel different. When you're no longer as easy to reach, when your attention isn't guaranteed, your image in her mind begins to transform. You go from someone who is always there to someone who has a life, priorities, and direction beyond just her. And that shift alone creates curiosity. It makes her wonder what you're doing, where your focus is gone, and why you're not as accessible as before. Curiosity is a powerful emotional trigger. It pulls people in without effort. When she starts wondering about you, thinking about you, and trying to understand your change in behavior, she becomes more mentally and emotionally invested. And investment is what builds attraction. The more she thinks about you, the more she feels connected, even without direct interaction. There's also a deeper psychological element at play. People naturally value what feels limited. When something is always available, it feels common. But when it becomes less accessible, it feels more important. Your time, your attention, your presence, these things gain weight when they're not constantly given away. And that's when she begins to see you differently, not just as someone who's there, but as someone whose attention has value. This doesn't mean you disappear to play games or try to manipulate her emotions. It means you genuinely shift your focus back to your own life. You become busy with your goals, your work, your growth. You're not ignoring her. You're just no longer prioritizing her above everything else. And that authenticity is what makes the change real. When she notices this, it creates a contrast. She remembers how available you used to be, and now she sees that you're not the same anymore. That contrast sparks attraction because it breaks the old pattern. It shows growth, independence, and self respect, all of which are deeply attractive qualities. Over time, this changes the entire dynamic. Instead of you constantly seeking her attention, she starts seeking yours. Instead of you trying to keep the connection alive, she becomes more invested in maintaining it. And all of that happens without you forcing anything. When your availability decreases, your value increases in ways words never could. When she comes back, most men think that's the moment they've been waiting for, so they fall right back into the same pattern. They get excited, they open up completely, they give the same level of attention as before, and they act like nothing ever happened. But this is exactly where everything either changes or repeats. Because if nothing about you has changed, then nothing about the dynamic will change either. Her leaving once already showed you something important. It showed you that the way things were before wasn't strong enough to keep her fully invested. So if she returns and you go back to being the same version of yourself, overly available, overly accommodating, and without clear standards, you're silently telling her that she can repeat the same behavior without consequences. And people always repeat what they can get away with. This is why the moment she comes back is not about proving your love, it's about showing your growth. You don't need to say it directly, you show it through how you carry yourself. You're still calm, still composed, still respectful, but you're not the same emotionally accessible person she left behind. There's a difference now. You have boundaries, you have standards, you're not rushing to give her everything again. That doesn't mean you punish her or act cold. It means you respond with balance, you match effort instead of overgiving, you allow things to build naturally instead of forcing them back to where they were. You let her feel that your time and attention are valuable, and that being in your life requires consistency, not just temporary interest. When she senses that shift, it changes how she approaches you. Now, instead of feeling like she can come and go freely, she starts to feel that your presence has weight. That if she loses you again, it might actually be permanent this time. And that feeling creates a level of seriousness that wasn't there before. This is also where self respect becomes visible. You're no longer someone who tolerates emotional ups and downs without question. You're someone who observes, who adjusts, and who chooses what aligns with your standards. And that kind of mindset forces the dynamic to either improve or end, which is exactly what you want because both outcomes protect your peace. Most men think keeping her is about holding on tighter, but in reality, it's about standing stronger. It's about showing that you've learned from the past and that you're not willing to repeat the same cycle again when she comes back. Your growth should be the reason things change, not your excitement. The moment you stop being afraid of losing her is the moment everything begins to shift in your favor. Fear is what drives most of the wrong decisions in relationships. It's what makes you chase when you should step back, over explain when you should stay calm, and hold on tighter when everything is already slipping away. When you're operating from fear, your actions are no longer grounded, they're reactive. And that reactivity is what slowly weakens your position. When you're afraid to lose her, you start placing her at the center of your life. Your mood depends on her responses. Your confidence depends on her attention. Your peace depends on her consistency. And without realizing it, you give away control of your emotional state. That's why every time she pulls away, it hits harder. Because it feels like you're losing something you need, not just someone you care about. But the man who wins in this situation is the one who reaches a different level of mindset. He understands that while he may want her, he doesn't need her to feel complete. His life already has direction, purpose, and meaning beyond the relationship. So when she pulls away, he doesn't collapse emotionally. He doesn't feel the urge to chase or fix things out of panic. He simply stays grounded in his own path. This kind of emotional independence creates a powerful presence. When you're not afraid of losing someone, your actions become more authentic. You're no longer trying to impress, convince, or hold on. You're simply being yourself without pressure or expectation. And that authenticity is what makes people feel drawn to you on a deeper level. There's also a shift in how she perceives you. When she senses that you're not clinging, not chasing, and not afraid to walk away if necessary, it creates a level of respect that wasn't there before. Respect is built when someone knows you have standards and the strength to uphold them. And once respect is present, attraction has a much stronger foundation. Ironically, this is often when she starts to feel something she didn't feel before, fear of losing you. Because now she sees that you're not dependent on her. She sees that your life continues with or without her. And that realization creates urgency on her side. It makes her more careful, more attentive, and more invested in maintaining the connection. But the key is you don't reach this point by pretending. You reach it by genuinely building a life that doesn't revolve around her. You invest in yourself, your goals, your growth, and your purpose. You become someone who is whole on his own. And from that place, any relationship becomes a choice, not a necessity. When you're no longer afraid to lose her, you stop losing yourself, and that's what makes her afraid to lose you.